Well, I don't see two of the applicants yet, but we can get started. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. We'll hope they show up as we move along in the agenda, because there are a couple items that will take a little bit of time. So I want to get going efficiently if we can. So it is Monday, April 25th, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. I call this meeting of the Needham Design Review Board to order. I'm the board chair, Mark Glusing, and I would like to confirm that members and applicants are present and can hear me. So members, when I call your name, please respond. Susan Opton. Chad Riley.
Here.
Deborah Robinson.
Here.
Also attending our town staff, Rana Dorfer and Elisa Lichman. Applicants on the agenda, if you would please respond with your name. Needham Channel, 257 Chestnut Street.
I'm Mark Mandel.
Home Decor Group, 1424 Highland Ave.
Here, Jason Gagnon with Sousa Signs.
Okay. Interim Corp for various facades on two buildings in on Kearney and Gould.
Jeff Lyons here for Interim Corp.
Okay, thank you. Needham Gateway, modify site plan review, 100-120 Highland Ave. Okay, we'll see if he shows up. Town of Needham, Emery Grover.
President Hank Haff and Joe Bargman is present also.
Okay, and then the Needham Revitalization Trust Fund, I just sent him out for a walk, so we know he'll be back.
There's a John Lafreniere architect after his name. Would that be part of the, yeah, I'm gonna promote him to panelist. Or them, sorry.
I think that was on the interim corp work.
Ah, okay.
So good evening. Welcome to this open meeting of the Needham Design Review Board, which is being conducted remotely consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations. For this meeting, the Needham Design Review Board is convening by Zoom app as posted on the town's website, the Design Review Board page, identifying how the public may join. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. DRB meetings typically do not allow public comment. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this board are available on the town's website. Public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Please be aware that other people may be able to see you. Take care that not to screen share your computer unless the chair approves. And please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. I would like to review the remote meeting procedures for tonight's meeting. I will introduce each applicant on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will take comments or questions from the Design Review Board members. After discussion, each vote will be by a roll call vote. The building department requires electronic submission of building permit applications. A copy of the application, stamped and noted for the type of approval that it receives, will be emailed to the applicant by DRB support staff. That can be then attached to your building permit application, or in some cases, you're forwarded to the planning board. So we'll now start with the first item on the agenda. Mark Mandel is here, Needham Channel, 257 Chestnut Street, for an informal review of the landscaping. As you remember, Mark came in and we reviewed some signage for that building and a freestanding sign. There was some discussion of the planting bed that the sign went into, which was basically just a mulched bed. And we, while it's not part of that sign review, well, we suggested it'd be nice if they tried to get a little more landscaping into that. He is not required to present a landscaping plan to us unless it is part of a site plan review process with the planning board. But he wanted to come in, he offered to come in and do an informal review, get some feedback from us on what they're thinking of doing. And so we appreciate that he does that, because we do like to contribute to these ideas and monitor this kinds of development whenever we can. So thanks, Mark, for coming in, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back on here. I was last in front of you guys at the end of February, and I am thrilled to report that we actually just got the signage that you approved installed on Friday. So we are up and running in terms of our signage. I'm just checking back in today because one of the things, as Mark had said, is that you guys had requested that we think a little bit more in terms of the landscaping. We had cleared out some bushes that had been overgrown and that were not in a very healthy condition, and it had left our property looking a little bit on the barren side. And one of the things that one of the neighbors who had spoken during the public hearing the last time had mentioned to us that she had wanted it to be a little bit more full, a little bit more lively. So we had our landscaper come on out, and he just submitted a really simple plan. And it shows a variety of hostas, boxwoods, and azaleas, which he had just kind of plotted out in the curved foreground of the studio. And basically just the thought was to have something that would flower a little bit, that would be low lying, and that wouldn't interfere with the signage, and that wouldn't interfere with the sight lines as drivers are coming around from Chestnut Place to Chestnut Street. And then I had approached Lisa, and she had suggested that you guys might have some input that you would have that you could suggest to us on that.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, it is a very simple diagram. I think that's kind of a cool little structure you're housed in there. If I didn't know if you're renovating the studios or not, but that looks very English. So yeah, so we all have a chance to look at that planning bed. I think Susan probably has some comments. So I would start with you, Susan.
Susan, you're muted.
Susan, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I wanted to say hi, Mark.
Hello.
And I did stop by your property because it's around the corner from me. So I do have some comments about your plan. And one of them is, so I have sort of 3 different ideas that could work and be a little more interesting than, in my opinion, what your landscaper came up with. And one was sort of more, so I don't think you have a lot of water in that spot, and I think you're probably dealing with snow plows running through there in the winter, salt, and a very sunny location. And so I think simple's good. I think your landscaper had a good thought there, like 2 or 3 different things. One of my sort of ideas.
Now listen, I hate to bother you. So Negosian, so I'm in line on the design review board thing, and Negosian's an attendee.
Okay.
Right. Well, when we get to your when we get to your excuse me, Mike.
But yeah, he's in it.
Please do not unmute unless asked to. Thank you. Susan, please continue.
I'm not sure what the gentleman was trying to say. Is that your
Yes.
landscaper?
No, he's talking about a different project. So go ahead, Susan.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I thought maybe grasses and some sunny perennial flowers would be pretty, partially because that's what's going on across the street. And it sort of speaks to each other, and it's drought tolerant and answers sort of all of the issues that I've just addressed. And the flowering shrubs and the evergreen shrubs are nice, but they tend to get squashed by snow load and the plows going through. So I like to avoid that in those areas. And so grasses and flowers that get cut down and are not there in the winter so that they don't get bashed up is one strategy to avoid that. If you did want to keep with the evergreen scheme, I was thinking that boxwoods tend to get full of diseases, and unless you're gonna kind of monitor them all the time, they tend to look not very good over a few years, and you have to replace them all the time. So there's another more native shrub called Ilex glabra gembox, which looks just like a boxwood, and its branches are a little more pliable, so if they do get, you know, dumped with snow, they kind of pop back up, unlike boxwoods, which will break, or I just get a myriad of other things wrong with them. So if you're married to boxwoods, I would suggest replacing the boxwood with Ilex glabra, and gembox is the small one because you don't want one to get large. And
how do you spell that?
Ilex is Ilex.
Mhm.
Glabra is Glabra, and the variety is called gembox, like GEM and the word box. It's the smallish variety of that plant. And you can mix that with Spirea bumalda, which is another flowering plant, which has a pliable, fine branch system that won't get too mutilated by the snow. And then the third thing is, I think we talked about maybe just a ground cover, and you can throw these ground covers in with any of these other scenarios. One would be bearberry, which is an evergreen ground cover, which has a little tiny flower and a berry on it, and it's native and would do fine in those conditions. The other one is a completely different look, which is a sedge called Pennsylvania sedge. And it's more of a grassy looking thing, and it lays down in the winter, and you would just cut it back and it grows back. It kind of looks like a wavy lawn. And the third one is Liriope, Liriope, which is a flowering ground cover and spreads around a lot and is really pretty sort of by itself and has a little purple spiky flower. So those were sort of my 3 different comments about the different kinds of plants you could put there. And if anybody cares, I could share the picture of the grassy perennial idea, but I know we have a busy night, so I don't know if we want to mess around with whether or not I can share my screen and all.
Okay. No, that's very helpful. I think what we can try and do, Mark, is just send you an email with these suggestions, and then you can work with your landscape gardener and see which ones you want to use and how you want to mix them in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like the idea of a evergreen plus a flowering plant combo, because I think that would bring out different things in different seasons, and yet won't leave a time when the place looks too barren.
Okay.
Something in there for everybody.
Deborah, any additional thoughts?
Sorry, no, I'm good. I think that was very thorough. Thanks, Susan.
Chad?
I agree. I defer to our colleague. Good, thorough comments.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate your looking at this closely, Susan. That's very helpful. And I do like the mix of the ground covers. I thought that was the one thing that I wasn't sure was involved in the proposal. So I'd rather than see a series of these bushes and then ground and then mulch, this will a little more ground cover. We'll just give it a big green covering. I think it could be nice. So thanks for doing that. So that's kind of our comments, Mark. That was helpful. We appreciate you
Very
coming
much.
in. And if you have any other questions, really just let us know. I will work with Susan and Elisa. We'll try and just give you a quick list of what she was talking about.
That would
And
be
again, you can see which ones work into your landscape company's abilities.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you guys very much.
You're welcome. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Jason Gagnon, Sousa Signs Home Decor Group, 1424 Highland Ave.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board. How are you? Hope all is well. If it is easier for you, if I have permission to share screen, that way I can walk you guys through the sign package.
Sure, be great. Thank you.
Right. Perfect. That you don't want to see. All right, so over at 1424 Highland Ave, and I just wanted to point out real quick that Mr. Jonathan Tapper is with me. He is from the Home Decor Group. So if there are any questions regarding the business and or business related questions, I can definitely grab him to talk on behalf of that. So over at 1424 Highland Ave, and I apologize if I say the company name wrong, it was the existing Babel Paint Store, which was a Benjamin Moore store. Home Decor Group is the new owner of the property or of the business. So we're going to be changing all the existing signs. So that way it entails, incorporates over to what Home Decor Group has done across several of their stores. So on the first page, we've got a main wall sign. On the left-hand side, which would be over here, there's a small 2 foot by 3 foot non-illuminated wall sign. And then as well out front, there are a couple of awnings. So what we are looking to do is to remove the existing internal channel lighter set and put up a new channel lighter set that will be on a raceway backer panel, which is going to be painted to the background color of the building. The fun thing about this front storefront is that this section where you see the blue area is not the entirety of this storefront. This storefront actually kicks all the way over by the restaurant where this window is. This is all incorporated into it, but the way that they have the assumption with the architectural designing of the building, it almost looks like it's two different split areas where the restaurant goes much further left, where in fact it doesn't. We are also looking to remove, remove the existing awnings, but all we're proposing to do is recover them with a blue fabric, keeping the same frames, just trying to refresh the appearance of the entrance a little bit. And then on the right-hand side, the 2 foot by 3 foot sign, we're looking to remove and then put up a much smaller sign that would be fall underneath the wayfinding category due to it being under 2 square feet. And then this is the awnings with the fabric that are just going to be being recovered. And with the GIS map, Highland Street runs this way. Everything runs on the front except for that one small Ben Moore sign, which would be on the parking lot. And on the back side, there is a school up in that right-hand corner just for visual appearance. So are there any questions?
All right, thanks for going through that. I will look through it. Is there any signage on that proposed at that rear entrance?
There is an existing, I want to say it's like a 2 by 3 or 3 by 3 flat panel sign that says deliveries, but it's marked as Babel. That's supposed to be removed from the property.
Okay, and you're not proposing anything at this point?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. All right, thanks. All right, so questions from the board. Could you go back to the front elevation for me with the new sign? Thank you. Okay, Deborah, do you have any questions, comments?
So the background of the sign is the blue that you're showing. Are you repainting the facade so that the background of the sign and the building are exactly the same?
I'm going to say that, like I said, Jonathan Tapper is with me. We are planning to match whatever color the buildings that's going to be painted. We are going to match it with the same paint, so that way it blends in. And one of the locations that he has is over in Lynn, Mass, where we had done the same thing. So if you look, this is the actual background panel, but it from away, you can't even tell that it's there.
Being a paint store, it would be not a good thing if sort of the match wasn't quite a match.
Yes, that is very true.
My other comment, if we go back to the, so on the bottom left, the image, you're putting this basically in the same place as the existing sign. I mean, it kind of looks to me, I don't know what the attachment is. It looks to me like the sign might be better just to be a little bit higher on the facade. It's kind of tight to the awnings.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely center it in between, if you will, the downlight EMT that runs across and then the awnings. So we can definitely move that up and have it centered.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it has to be too much higher, but just a little bit.
Okay.
I guess those are my two comments.
All right.
Chad, do you have any comments? Questions?
Yeah, I think it's maybe unfortunate for Home Decor Group that comparing it to the Babel's typography, which was pretty low key. I think it's a much more kind of aggressive typography and logos and things like that. And it just looks a little big to me on the facade. I mean, I understand that it seems like it's 32 square feet, but it's a fairly small storefront, and the traffic moving along here is fairly slow with traffic lights and everything else. So it just, in my eye, I understand the panel is going to kind of disappear, but it just looks a little larger than it needs to be.
Yeah, the decor and home are 22 inches high. So things typically signs along that section, we've had them more in the range of 14 to 18 inches. At 18 inches would be one of the larger ones, I think, from my memory. But it is under the size of the size limit for the sign area.
Yeah, I
Susan?
think if they weren't painting out the panel to match the wall, we would have said that they need much more negative space around it. So if you draw a panel around it, we typically would have shrunk the text. In this case, you know, sort of get away without the negative space because the building becomes the negative space. But I think if you compare it to other signs, we would have asked them to reduce the size of the font.
Okay. Susan, any other additional questions or comments?
I'm just going to second what Chad said, because I'm not the sign person here, but I had a similar sort of gut reaction that it seemed a little large.
Okay. Right. And he is correct that the sign on the side is under 2 square feet, and it is simply a wayfinding sign. That's we do look at them, but it is an as of right sign. My only suggestion there, because the building is dark, you're changing to a darker color, that maybe it not be a bright white background, if that's possible, that you might be able to just tone that a little bit less. Because, you know, on the red, I assume the red color staying, is that what I'm?
Yeah, so the
Okay.
red is actually, it's a brick facade. I think it was either brick or it was painted.
I think it's painted.
Yeah. So,
And it's, so we would suggest that you just tone down the contrast a little bit, but.
Okay.
That would be my only comments there. And then really, I think I'd echo Chad's concerns about the overall size, even though it meets the 32 square feet. Those are some pretty big letters. If you compare it, I tried to look at an image of the restaurant adjacent and some of the other storefronts on that next section where the cupcake bar is and some of that. I just, it seems a little, just a little larger and denser than you might need there in that location. Again, as Chad pointed out, the traffic is very slow. I'd be curious if the board members had any thoughts as to a more reasonable size. Would we look at the D dropping to 18 inches? And then, they can adjust the rest. I think, because the stroke on those letters is, it must be, at that scale is probably 4 inches wide on the D and on the decor lettering.
you're referring to the white outline around the letters?
No, just how wide, say, the vertical line on how thick are the letters, if I call them thickness?
Yeah. Actually, just pulling that up real quick. Off screen. Yeah, so on the decor portion, it is about 5.5 inches, and then on the home, it's around 3.5, 3/4.
So when you look at the way the existing sign, the Babel sign fits between the awnings with a little space to spare, that sort of width actually looks good.
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable with it being a little bigger. They've just got, there's a, the name is just a different name. So it does going to take up a little more space, but I mean, a 5.5 inch, 22 inch high letter is more of a fast paced Highland Ave section rather than this section. So I think we'd like to see this reduced just a little bit in scale. I'm trying to look at the adjacent, again, the adjacent property is what's kind of driving my thought, but I think if we went to, say, an 18-inch high letter and then you reduced it proportionally, that would be a more acceptable scale to go up there, and then you can adjust to the panel as you please, because the way it gets painted out, it really isn't a background issue. Any thoughts from the other board members?
Yeah, I would say 18 probably is the upper end of what would seem appropriate there.
And that would probably, so we're reducing that 20% roughly. That would reduce those 5-inch letters to maybe a 4-inch letter, which might be a little bit less dense and heavy. I agree with Deborah that if you want to raise it up, I wouldn't center it necessarily between the awnings and the top, but you might just raise it 6 or 8 inches. Deborah, does that feel like
That's what I was thinking.
reasonable?
And I am listening to absolutely everything. I'm just, as we're talking, I'm trying to rescale it on a different screen just to down to like an 18, 19 inch area. So that way I can give you some quick feedback, if you will.
Okay, and anybody have any questions or comments regarding the awning change? I don't have an issue with simply a color change. I think it works with the new color scheme they have.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that.
It's fine.
So reducing we'll call it the height of the H and the D, reducing the entire sign proportionately brings the stroke down to like 4 3/4 on the D, and then obviously it's a little bit less, and that brings the overall length to just is 9'4" opposed to the just shy of 11 feet.
Okay. All right, that seems like it'll fit well to
Okay.
me. So I think we're going to suggest that as our ruling. So the way we have an approach where we can approve with conditions,
Mhm.
and then you can go ahead and make it according to our recommendations. You don't have to come back. You don't have to resubmit any documents. The building inspector will review our drawing and make sure that you complied with the changes that we made.
Yep.
So that's how I'd like to do this one. So I would take a motion to approve the front sign with the condition that it be reduced, the size of the letters be reduced from 22 3/8 to 18 inches, and that they be adjusted proportionally to that.
So moved.
Oh, Deborah, Susan, can you do the seconds tonight?
Second.
All right. And we come to the vote. We have Chad Riley,
Approved.
Susan Opton,
Approve.
Deborah Robinson,
Approved.
and the chair approves. All right, so thank you. And also then we need to do the awnings. I would take a motion to approve the awning change, the color change as submitted.
So moved.
Approve. Oh,
Okay, Susan seconds. Thank you.
second, sorry.
Susan Opton,
Approve.
Chad Riley,
Approved.
Deborah Robinson,
Approved.
and the chair approves. All right, so thank you. And we will,
Mark, if I could, just one
Yep.
quick comment. In terms of signage package, this signage is pretty straightforward, so we're able to review and approve it with this. But there are, if you're back before the board again, there are a lot of requirements in terms of more information about the sign construction and attachments to the building and a wide variety of things. So sometimes approvals can get hung up or delayed and extended to another session if those materials aren't submitted. So I would just encourage you, if you're back before the board again, to review the requirements and to try to make sure we've got a full package the next time around.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Chad.
and that information's on our website. So you can check that out before when the next time if you're in town again. All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Good luck with the business.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is really the two buildings on Kearney Road, Gould Street, Hampton Ave, and Ellis Street, Interim Corp. So are they up there? They are. Welcome.
I guess, thank you. I guess I'll make the introduction. My name is Randy Goldberg. I'm a principal of Interim Corp. We recently acquired the Tosi, the property known as the Tosi property, located at 110 to 116 Gould Street, 95-101 Hampton Avenue, 45 to 55 Kearney Road, and 11 Ellis Street. With me tonight is Jeff Lyons from Interim Corp, as well as John Lafreniere, who's the project architect. The project consists basically of an approximately 3.5 acre site improved by two buildings totaling approximately 80,000 square feet, all of which are single story, aside from one small portion on the corner of Ellis and Gould Street, which has a second story addition. There are approximately 9 tenants at the property. Our plan for the property, which is pretty much for the past, I'm going to say 20 to 30 plus years, been used more for industrial purposes, is to upgrade the property in an effort to attract more tech and office type tenants, robotics companies, etc. And in order to do that, our plan proposes the following general improvements. Color change to the existing facade, which is limited to paint colors. new windows along the Gould and Kearney Street buildings. Those windows will be storefront type, and the project architect will be able to do a quick, we'll do a screen share so we can walk you through the project, but replacing windows to match the existing. New tenant entries, again, in place of existing, just newer door systems, insulated glass, and then an Alucobond surround system around those tenant entryways, as well as a decorative fin identifier along Gould Street, which again, we can walk you through. We're excited about the project because we really see that that area is in need of some improvement. And I think if I can introduce John, he can probably pull up with his screen share the submission package. John? Did we lose him?
Okay, no, I'm here. So if I can share the screen here, I'll walk you through the sort of a series of photographs of the surroundings, the building, and then the drawings itself. Can everybody hear me?
Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, great. Now where is the, okay, here it is. I can't. Is this screen, can you see this screen?
No.
Okay, let me try this again. Share, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, are you looking at the site aerial plan?
Well, you have your screen, but there it is.
Yep.
Excuse me?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. So let me try to make this get a little bigger. So the just to give you a sort of the geographic, I don't actually have a further zoom out of this, but this is Gould Street coming along the to the left here between Building A and the series of townhouses, and then we have the park is up above, and then a series of industrial buildings around the side. And I'm going to go to the next thing, and this is a slightly better context view of it. And 128 is up at the top here along this edge of the site. Well, it's actually not the site; it's beyond the site. So you can see here as you come down Gould Street, you're facing this corner of looking down Gould to the left or Kearney to the right. If you continue down that, if you're in Kearney Street and you're looking back at Gould, that's number 2 here. Moving along Gould, there's a 2-story section that was added to accommodate a gym at one point, and that's there. And this is one of the typical entries. Take you to another site. This is the surroundings of the building. We have the park from Ellis Street, and then along Hampton Street, you can see there's some, it's essentially a parking lot, and then more industrial buildings. Take you around the other side of the building. This is more context. Looking down Kearney Street, we've got a series of buildings and parking lots, as you can see here. And along Gould Street, there's very heavy vegetation, really shielding these houses from the street. The proposal, as it is now, you can see the building, it's quite sort of bland, and there's a lot of wall above the windows, and the windows appear quite small. These have a series of operating windows which are dysfunctional at the moment. We're proposing to replace all the windows, and essentially are adding these Alucobond entry areas, which I'll show you a detail of as we get a little further along. I'm sure you've seen them in the drawing submission. And then there's a series of bands and fins along the edges to accentuate the corners and give some sort of modulation and termination to the volumes of the building. Same thing with the second story of this, it raises up. This is looking, actually, as you come around the building, this is looking from on Kearney Street. We have a series of entries there, and you can see this is the existing building. Looking from Ellis at the end building, there's an existing entry, a loading dock, and we're essentially, the project is really to paint the building, and then we're adding these chevrons and lines just to break up the volume a little bit. The interior of the courtyard is we're doing very little there. We propose in the future, right now, this is industrial uses and they actually need blank walls. In the future, we could imagine something else occurring there, and we're proposing to put windows in there in the future, and we just wanted to share that with you. The second building is a similar treatment. Again, the windows appear even meaner as they are now, and the addition of these little modulation, but I think really what helps is breaking up the length of the building by accentuating the entries with these Alucobond additions. This is in the interior of the courtyard. Again, part of that has an entry, and you can see that. Again, more of the same on the inside. This is some of the little bit of detailing of the entryways themselves. Essentially, it's there's a vertical element and a horizontal roof over some of it. Some of them do not, because part of it is we're already, well, anyway, whatever. Anyway, there's some more details there.
I think if I, John, if I could just add, if you could go back to that last page, please.
Sure.
I think.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that we're doing, if you could take your cursor and show and gloss over detail number 1, in addition to the Alucobond, we're also adding a Corten metal panel to the right by where that sample number 55 is.
Right.
And then also a decorative chain. And the idea was just to keep somewhat of a design that's in keeping with the industrial uses previously at the site. So again, just a different design element that we thought would be interesting.
Right, and you can see that a little. I was actually racing onto this 3D image here, which might be more helpful in understanding what we're doing with these entryways here. Again, it's trying to do something relatively simple that is sort of in keeping with the sort of period of the building. This is just a series of details that you asked for just to reflect that. That's essentially the scheme, but let me go back to one of the elevations. This one, that's probably the best one to really think about what we're doing there and what we're the attempt. Again, picking up you know, a few different tones of gray and you know, enlarging the windows, keeping the structural head. So we really the way these openings are created, it's very hard to, you know, of course our first thought was to raise the window heads, but it's a you know, a very expensive operation to do that, and so we're keeping that the same, but again, adding the fins was the and the or rather the entryways and these you know, decorative Alucobond bands, just to give it a little sense of the ends of the buildings too.
I think the other thing that's important to note is that when we acquired the building at the end of September, there are staggering lease expiry dates. So we had to be sensitive to those various occupants with respect to the replacement of window and door systems so as not to disrupt those various businesses. And quite frankly, the way that these spaces are used, whereby they do need a fair amount of interior space and block walls, we were comfortable with the existing size of the window openings. I think that what John had done by designing with the new storefront, electing to remove the operable window portion of the bottom of the existing storefront windows, I think it takes a little bit of that pressure or pinch point off of the current design. But we're excited about it. We've done several projects in the area, similar type projects, and hopefully you look favorably upon the submission.
All right,
Are there
thank you.
any questions?
Yeah, we'll walk through the board's comments and questions here. But thank you, that was nicely done, and I appreciate the little rendering that helped sort of get a little three-dimensional understanding of the new entrance schemes. So I would start with Chad Riley. Do you have any questions or comments?
I think my first comment is I appreciate the package. It's well put together, and it's very thoughtful in the way that it's providing a lot of context as well as all the information about the building renovation. And I second what Mark's saying, that having that little vignette rendering is extremely helpful as well. I think really just my kind of two main comments are, on the one hand, it does acknowledge that the tenant signage is subject to later permitting. One of the things that we run into in slightly larger buildings is when it starts to get broken up as multi-tenants, and if you end up in a situation where one entry serves multiple tenants, exactly how does the signage work on the rest of the building? I could envision a situation where people are wanting to put signs on locations other than just over the doors and the signage. So giving some thought. Obviously, that's not what we're here to discuss tonight, but just having an approach to that and having those discussions with the tenants up front can make things run smoother down the road. And then I think from the rendering, it's looking like those little raised beds behind the wheel stops at the parking is probably some kind of a sidewalk. And so the one thing I do notice, I think the buildings are well considered, but there is no indication of any kind of landscaping or any kind of soft surfaces as part of the overall development. Is the rest of all the paving essentially staying as kind of parking and drive area, or is there anything that's being done in terms of outdoor seating or softening up of the landscape in any way?
Okay, so this is Randy speaking again. Let me respond to both of those questions. The first question, I think it's a very good one. We are very sensitive to tenant signage. The last thing we want is for the building to end up as a billboard. I think one of the things that makes this site unique is that each of the tenant spaces, each of those entries as you see them, are not shared. They're dedicated directly into a tenant space. And like I had said, there are presently, I believe, 9 tenants there. I think ultimately what you will find is that the overall number of tenants will shrink. And it is our intention that above, John, if you could go to the rendering, it may be helpful, because this will also feed into the landscaping comment. So the idea is that there will be one location at each of the entries. We use the sample E35 for exit 35 at the top, but that will be the location at a primary entry for each tenant. Of course, submitted compliant with the signage bylaws. With respect to the landscaping, it was purposeful to send the drawing like this. This is unfortunately a site where there happens to be a lot of asphalt. There are not sidewalks. We do not intend upon making any meaningful changes that would trigger any site plan review. To the extent that we do, of course, we will seek the appropriate approvals. At this juncture right now, we do not have plans in place for the landscaping. It's a very short bed in front of the buildings, and I think that there's limited opportunity, but it is something we're going to explore. The goal tonight is obviously to focus on these, what we perceive to be minor facade improvements, just given the supply chain issues, so we can get the orders going. And then we're going to come back to you for monument signage, and then for particular tenant signage as we are able. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, no, and I don't think there's anything about facade modifications that mandate a site plan review or landscaping, but I would just encourage you to think about it. But in terms of what has been presented, no further comment.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is a difficult neighborhood. It's pretty much paved wall to wall, building to building. And it's unfortunate there was never any landscaping worked in an earlier time, but we encourage it as you can going forward. Try and think about a way to do that. So Deborah, do you have any questions?
Just to say that I think it's definitely an improvement over what's there. I think it'll look great. The other thing that's missing, I was wondering about lighting on the facade at all. I don't think I'm seeing anything. Is there an intent to light this?
So the existing building has wall packs around all of the buildings. And at this juncture, I think we are intending to keep that signage, being sensitive to the neighbors. It seems to work well. It's not obtrusive. The only additional signage lighting that's being contemplated at this time is the canopies over each of the tenant entries will have two downlights so that the individual entries are obviously illuminated. And I believe, John, is there a light if you could go to the facade, the elevation that shows Gould Street, please?
Yeah, just a second, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so I believe if you could put your cursor on the fin. So that's a decorative fin that's constructed of steel. I believe there's a detail for it, and it has Corten metal panels on it. And the intention is, did we lose it? I think we did. I think okay, I'm sorry. I think there is a small inset decorative light.
There's a light that's sort of hidden in the steel, and these are Corten panels, which will be will be illuminated indirectly at night from something behind the flange of the steel here, a continuous light here. So it'll just glow, but it's nothing that's going to emit light from towards anybody really.
Okay.
That's sorry, that occurs just at this point, and the lights are pointing back towards the building only.
Okay. Susan?
Susan, you muted.
I definitely think it's an improvement, and I don't have anything further to add.
Okay. I would concur. That's a nice, these buildings can be difficult to deal with. You either have to go whole hog crazy and turn them into something else, or do what you did, which was find a way to do some accents, get a color scheme that starts to work. I think, keying on those entrances is a nice approach, and with the color change and the materials you're using there, I think it works very well. So I think it'll be a nice improvement. And
thank you.
I understand the issues on the windows. Making them larger can be vertically a lot more work than dropping them down a little bit more, or just converting into removing the flip leaf that opens up. So I think I would say that I think I like the approach you took. Obviously, there's some economical considerations to how you did it, but I think you modulated the height a little bit by going above. The only question I do have is what kind of mechanical equipment services these buildings at this point? Is it rooftop stuff units?
They're rooftop and they're inset. They're pretty far inset from the street.
Okay.
On all of the elevations.
They're not very large, and you actually really don't see them as you're going along the street, as you can see here.
Yeah, I went back to the photos and you can see.
Yeah.
They're not.
And I think the other thing is there aren't plans for changing the HVAC, because quite frankly, the prior owner did keep up with keeping those systems current.
Okay. Okay. Anything else from the board? All right, so I would take a motion to approve. I have to find the application, sorry.
So moved.
Approve the changes to 110-16 Gould Street, 95-101 Hampton Ave, 11 Ellis, 45-55 Kearney, as submitted.
Thank you very much.
So I have a second. So
So
Chad
moved.
moved.
So moved.
Have a second, please.
Second,
And we come to the vote. Susan Upton,
Sorry, approved.
Chad Riley,
Approved.
Deborah Robinson,
approved.
and the chair approves. So thank you, guys. Nice job.
Thank you
And
very much.
We appreciate the information in the package. It was very helpful.
Thank you very much.
Good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good luck, team.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is Needham Gateway 100 to 120 Highland Avenue. I think Mr. Moskowitz had someone else he wanted to let in, but we'll let him tell us who that is. So,
We're okay. I'm okay for now.
okay. So this was the changing a dumpster location, I believe. You want
Yes.
to describe what you're going to do to us?
So we have a dumpster, we have a cardboard dumpster enclosure at the corner of the former FW Web store. And that is going to be relocated to a parking spot in the far corner of the parking lot.
And are the members able to look at the site plan and see that change?
Mark, if I could ask, I'm not sure how many people are on the call, but I am aware that there was considerable discussion of this project at a planning board meeting recently. And so maybe before we start discussion, maybe define what it is that we are here to do tonight and the things that really have already been reviewed by the planning board, so we don't go back and open up issues that are not really the purview of this board.
Sure. So this, this change required them to make a adjustment to their previous site plan review approval. We are simply reviewing it, and we will send comments to the planning board of what our thoughts are related to their proposed changes. It is not a public hearing for us. It is simply one of our typical review meetings.
Thanks.
So Mike is.
So can I further explain?
Yeah, why don't you explain what you're doing here?
So when the original special permit was approved in 2005, 2006, there was a fence structure between my property and the residential property that was approved. Subsequent to the development of the center, I enclosed a portion of the area with the same type of fencing for a cardboard dumpster corral, which I did not realize at the time I needed special permit approval. So in going back to the board has approved the relocation of that dumpster corral to, again, the parking spot and in the far corner of the site plan. I can't share my screen, so hopefully you can have that. But we're using the exact same material that was approved in the original special permit, and the planning board approved the location. And I guess they asked me to come before your board to approve the material, which again is the same material that has been approved in the original special permit for fencing. It's
Okay.
white. It's white
So-
PVC.
Yeah, what we're seeing is a white PVC fence.
Right.
So you're basically filling that entire parking space. You'll have 3 different dumpsters in it. Is that what I'm seeing?
That is correct. We submitted a drawing that shows the dumpsters fitting in, and that the fence is 6 feet high. Again, I don't have that drawing in front of me, but I think the dumpsters are 43 inches high. Is that correct? On that drawing you have, but the dumpsters are below the fence is higher than the height of the dumpsters.
Yeah, okay. I guess I would ask the dumpster enclosure that exists in the center of the parking area, so kind of across the drive from this new location. What's that made of? That's some more substantial construction.
That's it's a compactor that takes the trash, the non-cardboard trash, and it's a bigger dumpster and therefore a bigger enclosure.
Okay.
The dumpster that we're relocating to that parking space is for cardboard only.
Okay. Right.
Mark, I think to answer your question, because I went and looked at it, that is enclosed with some kind of block.
Okay. So is that a split face block kind of wall around that dumpster, Mike?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I think it has a chain link or something in front.
Has two big chain link doors in the front for the truck to be able to pick up the compactor.
Okay. Thanks, Susan.
But that's not part of this.
No, I just want to
I
understand
understand.
what we're building around there and
Yeah.
why this is something else. So I'd start. Deborah or Susan, do you have any other comments that while you started?
So, are you removing the existing fence that you're moving to the car space?
We're removing a portion of that fence that comprised the enclosure. Okay, there's an existing part from the property line to the building that's staying. So we're removing a portion of that and then buying, some new fence pieces to make up the square. But again, all the same material.
I see. I guess, in my opinion, it's kind of to have the white PVC fence right across from the beige block seems a little strange to me. Architecturally, too many different kinds of materials all in the same, within sight of each other. That's just my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to look at the relationship there. Deborah?
Sorry, yeah, I'm trying to see what other images are included here. I don't really have any comments.
Okay, Chad?
I don't love PVC fence, but there's enough of it around, and I think that the block is set back a little bit from the street line, whereas the fencing, I think people are accustomed to seeing it, as a residential type application. It's a little closer to the street, so I'm not particularly bothered by it. I noticed in the materials that were submitted, there's a photo of the existing PVC, and the posts and the caps only sit a little higher than the adjacent fence, whereas in the drawing, the diagram makes it look like the posts sit up quite a bit higher than the fence. And the drawing is sort of simple enough that it's not demonstrating that it's got that same sort of board, reveal type pattern in it. So I guess I'm just looking for a clarification that maybe the drawing is not quite as accurate, and that all of the detailing and materials and finishes and things are intended to match the photograph that is labeled Exhibit 4.
That is correct. I had a friend of mine who's in the sheet metal business do the drawing for me. But we're basically duplicating what's there in the photograph. So.
And in the picture on Exhibit 4, there's one post that has a little decorative cap on it and 3 posts that have no decorative cap on it. So is it simply at the gate where I can imagine that the decorative cap would prevent the gate from swinging open? Is the intent that all the fixed posts have the decorative cap, and the gate where it just physically can't have the cap does not, or how would that detailing work?
Not sure I understood, but if you're talking about the
All
caps
right,
on the,
Mark,
Can you-
I can share the screen if it's easier.
yeah, if you do that, that'd be easy.
Yeah, go ahead, Chad.
Okay.
We're not
So-
taking any comment, correct?
No.
Okay. Somebody.
Oh,
in
I
the
see what
image
you're
is-
saying.
Yeah, the fixed post here has a cap, and I can see, if these two had caps on it, you wouldn't be able to swing because they would crash into each other.
Right.
So I'm just looking to confirm that all of the fixed posts where you can have the cap will have the cap. But if at the gate, you can't have those just because the hinging wouldn't allow for it, that it would only be at the gate with no decorative cap.
Right. Wherever we can put a cap, we'll put a cap, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think Chad's other comment was the drawing shows those posts extending up quite a bit beyond
Yeah.
the top rail of the panels. Is that
It-
going to, are you
No.
going to do that way on the new fencing?
No, we're gonna do it based on the photo. Again, the drawing was done, the drawer did not go to the site, and I did not send him a picture. So I apologize for that discrepancy. But the posts are gonna be duplicated exactly the way they are in Exhibit 4 or in the photo.
Okay. I guess I'm wondering why, these have seen some use in time. Why are you basically you're telling us you're reusing, say, this gate and the panel to the left of the gate, and then the panel to the right, they're at a right angle to that gate.
Yes.
But the hinges have already been moved twice, it appears, and there's all sorts of extra holes, and the gate itself is bashed in and broken. Is there any reason not to simply buy a new enclosure all the way around?
I mean, we can buy a new gate, but I think the other pieces are still in good shape. I mean, it's just a question of cost.
Okay. Yeah, I guess if you weren't using that, then you could look at an alternate color, but I don't want white and something else. All right. Let me go back here. Okay. All right, well, we will, basically our comments are repair the damage. There's some question about the caps and their frequency. And we will send these comments to the planning board. But there's no, I don't think, I'm speak for the board here, but there's not a major objection to it. Susan has some concerns about the color change given the proximity to the other area, but I think, it is something that you have on the site before it was reviewed and approved. So I'm comfortable, especially given the location is next to, I believe, another health service building and a parking lot, and Second Ave, which is a busy street. So it's not, its visual impact is not that strong. All right, so we will send this to you,
Okay.
and you will get a copy of our comments.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yep, bye.
And the next item is Hank Taff is here for the town of Needham to review the Emery Grover building renovations. There's a minor site plan review. So we will again be sending comments to the planning board about this, about our review. And I think we're going to say goodnight to Deborah. So if she's already gone. Okay, so Hank.
Right.
Take it
Thank
away.
you, Mark. Thank you, Mark, and thank you for hearing this presentation tonight. Just a brief introduction. We will actually be going first to the planning board and then to the ZBA on the project because it is a minor project. The building is the renovation of the Emery Grover building, which I think all of you know as the school administration building. It's functioned that way for decades. It will It will be a full gut renovation of that existing building. And the architect, Bargman, Hendry and Architects, will walk us through the proposed modifications. There are some minor additions to the building, but it will largely be a restoration project of the exterior envelope and a improvement of the thermal envelope within the building. Also with us tonight is the landscape architect, but I'll let Joel Bargman go through his slides and introduce Kyle Zwick as well.
Hi, good evening. My name is Joel Bargman. I just want to make sure you can see the screen. Have I shared successfully? Okay.
Yeah.
This is the view today. I'm going to show two slides that are historic, and they're both taken from with your back to downtown looking north. So the portico on the right is the one that's sort of overgrown today. The main entry to the building is the portico on the left. This particular view is important because one of the additions that Hank mentioned is a small roof addition on the north roof that we're pointing out that it's relatively inconspicuous from the main vantage point of the building. The other relevant idea of this historic image being up front is that the front of the building was not paved originally. And one of the major things that the Historic Commission, the school administration and others would like to do is to restore the front yard as much as possible to its existing condition. And before I turn it over to Kyle to walk you through the planting and the site plan, I just wanted to establish that there were 3 site criteria for the project that lead to the design. That this access road off of Highland Avenue is an easement to the abutting residential condominium project on the left. So that has to remain as it is currently configured. The front driveway had to connect to the rear parking lot. At one point we had sort of wondered if we could get more green space in here, but the way the school, St. Joseph School works is that in the mornings their buses and their parents back up on Oakland Avenue, and it makes it very difficult for administrative staff to get into the building, much less to get onto Oakland Avenue. So we have to keep this front access way for the school department use. And then the third I mentioned was the sort of desire to restore as much as possible that asphalt area that parks 10 spaces in front of the building. I'll discuss parking, but Kyle, do you want to talk about the site plan and some context with the planting first?
Sure. I'm Kyle Zick, a landscape architect. So I think Joel showed the historic views of the view from Highland Avenue. And that was important in terms of, what was the quality of the landscape. We're not trying to restore it to a certain era, but removing the pavement was important. So then once you remove that pavement, what is the context that you want to create? So it's a very simple lawn, ground plane, punctuated by a few shrubs up at the building at what was the original stepped entrance, and then a few shade trees as well. And we're retaining existing trees and the existing flagpole. The way a pedestrian would approach from Highland Ave, there's 2 paths. One at the very south of the site, where it's an accessible route, sloping up. It would meet the stairs, but not go into the center entry, but then go to the north portico, which is an accessible entrance. There is also a path that abuts the 3 head-in parking spaces that get you to the north portico as well. If you were to park in the parking lot on the east side of the building, your accessible route is also to the north portico, but just from the east side. There's a ramp there. Joel mentioned there's an addition to the building, which is on the southeast side. That's for loading service. And then we also have an enclosure for trash there. Otherwise, I won't talk about the parking because Joel was going to mention that, but in terms of planting, we have perimeter screen planting evergreen trees along Oakland Ave and along the St. Joseph School to screen the parking from the adjacent road and land. And we have some other deciduous trees in there as well. In the center of the parking, there is almost like H-shaped parking configuration. Deliberately, we don't have any planting there. We've reserved that for the potential future solar canopy. It's not part of the project now, but it's something that is desired in the future. Joel, you want to take it from there?
Yeah, the issue on the parking is we're down 2 spaces from the parking lot that is there, but that includes taking out approximately 10 spaces in the front of the building and only leaving 3 on the access road. So the parking lot's made quite a bit more efficient in the back, and that's the reason that the parking lot also gets just a little bit closer to Oakland Avenue than it is today. So I just wanted to explain that we're at 62 spaces. There were 64 spaces there originally. We will be dealing with that parking issue with the Zoning Board of Appeals. Kyle set the next portion of the presentation up nicely. The center entry is not being used because of the stairway and its inaccessible use, and making it accessible would really change the character of the building. We're making this portal on the east and on the north side the accessible entry to the building, which is this portal here. I mentioned there's an addition on the roof. It's in this corner of the roof. There's 2 things that's doing. It's putting the mechanical equipment that's now on the back of the building in a very prominent location, hidden within a roof penthouse on the top of the building, and it's obscuring the elevator overrun. While I'm on this roof slide, the roof will be replaced with new slate, and the gutters and that will be replaced, and the cornice repaired with copper material matching the existing. The reason that the elevator is in part of that penthouse is that the interior is quite complicated on the building. When you come up and go to this entry portico, you're still 5 feet down from the main level of the building, and you're 5 feet above the lower level of the building. So we're able to get folks into the front door that's there today and is in an accessible manner, but then we need the elevator right here in order to get those that are mobility challenged up to the main floor level of the building where the reception area is, and then takes you further up into the building. But by sort of definition of the split level nature of the building relative to the site, we need to get an elevator right by the entry, and that is what causes us to locate a penthouse as part of the north roof dormer. So what that's showing it in full view from the north, and then looking at it from town, you can see that the building tends to obscure most of that rooftop element. But again, what's in that box there is not only the elevator, but there are 4 VRF. The building will be all electric, fossil fuel free, and those compressors are up here in the attic space, actually inside the building. That's not an open roof element. They're protected and they're quiet and they're not seen. The portico is enclosed because, again, the front entry is rather tight, and to have the code required entry vestibule serving a space greater than 2,000 square feet required us to put an enclosed entry vestibule on the north side of the building. We're using the portico, and the portico has this structure that sort of ties into the existing window structure, but also happens to be structural reinforcing for the portico arch. There's a steel plate being put on here, and these are actually 2 columns. If you look closely at the south portico, you'll see what they did to that several years ago. That's staying, and it's actually well done, but it's not picturesque. This is intended to maintain the archway as a brick archway and conceal the reinforcing structure that's reinforcing that archway. On the back of the building, there are 6 openings on the second floor that are bricked in, and we will be opening those up in our elevation in order to bring light and air to this 3rd floor of the second floor, the 3rd floor above grade of the building. These windows were replacement windows, retrofit. We're taking those out and replacing them with sort of similar full arched windows. The mechanical equipment is here on the ground. As I mentioned, we'll have 4 VRF units for each floor of the building, and those will be hidden. So there's no mechanical equipment on the outside of the building. This is the existing entry to the building. That front entry isn't used today because of the accessibility issue, and you can see why we need to have a ramp coming up to it. We will have cutting down this area of the portico and infilling this area of the portico. So we're really moving the brick around the corner so that folks won't come out and walk into the driveway. They'll come out and walk down the ramp or walk to Highland Avenue. Here's the back side of the building showing those new windows. We're reglazing the arched windows that are already put in, but we're not putting in new arched windows at the ends. Kyle mentioned the loading addition. Because the building has this Roman brick to it, we're salvaging the brick that we're taking out of these windows and using it for any patching, but we don't have enough brick to clad the loading dock addition. So the intent is to do that in metal, standing seam metal siding, colored to match the brick on the building, and then the dumpster is subservient, but would be colored. I'll show you the same color as the metal, so that ties in as a sort of backdrop element. Here again is that front entry that will be filled in with a window. All these windows will replace with new windows. The new window adds 100 square feet of usable space to the building, but it also leaves a clue that this is no longer an entry, and it'll retain the vault, it'll retain the opening, but it won't be confused as an entry. Some of the non-original rain leaders that are in unfortunate locations will be relocated, and the clock has been located. It's at the Historical Society, but because of the cost and the maintenance, it's not really planned to be reinstalled. Here's the loading dock on the south side and the enclosure. I think Kyle's site plan showed those are sort of very inconspicuous and nicely concealed on the southeast corner of the building. The windows will be replaced with new metal clad wood. So they're wood on the inside, they're clad metal on the outside, which gives you a very thin mullion. So even though the window is much heavier because it's dual paned insulated safety glass, the mullion size will be similar to what was original on the building, that nice thin grid. The loading dock will be painted a sympathetic color to the brick. It's not all a single color on the Roman brick. The brick will be repointed. Our goal is that it would be 100% repointed, but as you know, prices are escalating, so we have a fallback where the engineers have gone through and identified exactly what needs to be repointed, and we have a fallback from 100% if that's not an affordable option. I think from a 100-year-old building, you have to acknowledge it's pretty darn good mortar work that they did, and it's really lasted well. The slate roof is being replaced in kind, but the rooftop element, the metal louver element, it'll be colored to match and blend into that slate roof. And Kyle does have a full set of landscape drawings here to show you, should you like to see those. But I think at this point we can open it up for questions, and I can come back to that if you have particular points to come to. Thank you.
Because I'd like to start with just any questions or comments on the overall site plan. And I don't know, Susan, if you want to discuss in a little more detail the planting now, or if you want to go through some of the comments on the overall site layout first. If not, I would.
Yeah, we can go over other comments first.
Okay, so Chad, do you want to talk about this? Any questions or comments on the site that you might have? You're not here. We're not hearing you, Chad.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I said overall, it was, I think it's a tasteful modernization of the building. I think it's, understand, especially from the standpoint of accessibility, why the interventions need to happen. And if it's all right, I might just share my screen to be able to walk through a couple specific comments and questions. A couple things on the building that I noticed is I definitely appreciate the historic photos. Two things that I picked up on are just how where the clock used to be is a dark accent up at the top of the building, and also there's a kind of railing or balustrade system here, neither of which are being addressed. I'm sure it's probably a cost issue why the balustrade is not going back. But as we were talking, I wonder if there might be an opportunity to maybe paint the circle out dark, and maybe using a font that might have kind of recalled some of the something that would have been done at the eras. Maybe is there an opportunity to put the building number on there or something like that, so it's more of a visual accent, but not necessarily a cost driver like reinstalling a clock might be. I was thinking, if it was south facing, the solar dial might be kind of a fun detail, which wouldn't need maintenance, but on a west face, I'm not exactly sure how a sundial works.
That's a good point.
So one of the things I'll come back to is the way that the central portal is set back in, but we'll kind of get to that in a minute. When we were on this page, I noticed that maybe we've got a slightly older version in our packet, but a couple things that I picked up on were, in this location, there's a bush, although the one that you were sharing doesn't have a bush there. In terms of screening the parking, having a bush or some kind of vegetation in this area might not be a bad thing. I think the bigger question I had was that this very large tree, which is shown here, also seemed to have been removed in the version that you were sharing with us. And so, is it determined that is an unhealthy tree, or is that actually going to be removed, or is that just a difference in graphics?
The large tree that you just mentioned will be removed. The town arborist or tree warden reviewed it and determined that its proximity to the addition was going to impact the roots too much. So that tree would be removed. The other tree near Highland Avenue you referred to as a bush, that the alignment of the path that goes along the nosing of those head-in parking spaces actually conflicts with that existing tree. It's only like a 1-inch diameter tree, so that would be removed.
Yeah, it might not be a bad thing to put some, in the same way there's some low but kind of dense bushes in the original planting, screening out the parking so that doesn't become kind of the front lawn image. Might not be a bad thing.
Okay.
So just kind of working through a couple of the other things. Oops, sorry. Here's the SketchUp view here. In terms of the entry. Right. So if it's possible, you know, it looks like there's a kind of different coffering detail in there, but if it's possible for this glazing to be set back a little bit more from the two flanking arched windows, you know, I know it's not going to be way back, but if it's possible to set it back a little bit, it might help with the reading of the building. It's, you know, just echoing a little bit the fact that that central portal was different. I understand why this band is being taken across, but it looks a little bit blank here below where that detailing is. And so one of the things I was thinking is, you know, whereas this is just not going to be an entrance anymore, you know, does it make sense to have some kind of a low planter with something kind of cascading over it? So you kind of have that formality of the front center area, but it's very clear to anyone approaching the building that you're not going to walk up those stairs and go in. So it just, again, to my eye, it looked a little bit kind of blank and infill there compared to the care and some of the detailing with the rest of the fenestration and that kind of band panel that's right in there. And then in terms of the enclosure pieces in the back where the dumpster and other things are, you know, using a different material, it's not historic. So, you know, painting it out to kind of blend in, but using a different material I was fine with. It's unfortunate if we're going to lose a big mature tree because of dumpsters, but I think otherwise I thought overall it was a tasteful package and way of handling the building.
Okay, I guess Kyle, could you take us through the landscape and just say which, I mean, I think I saw the planning board presentation a few weeks ago, and I think could you just kind of fill us in on which trees are being removed and which ones are staying, and talk a little bit about the additional plantings versus what supplemental planting to things that are already there?
Yep. Yeah, so I'll start on the Highland Avenue side. There's 3 larger green circles there, and those are proposed trees. 2 of them American elms, 1 is a Katsura tree. The darker green, smaller circle, that's an existing tree to remain. And the larger, darker green circle on the north end there, where Joel's pointing now, is also an existing tree to remain. There are some shrubs along the base of the building now on the Highland Avenue side, but those would be removed because they won't survive the construction. And then we have low shrubs proposed on either side of the set of stairs, low deliberately because there are windows that have sills that are very low to the ground. On the parking lot side of the building, we'll stay at the perimeter. So the St. Joe's edge, we have deciduous shade trees along the edge and then an evergreen screen, like a hedge, to screen the parking. And the same treatment on Oakland Avenue, an evergreen hedge replacing the existing vinyl fence. And then those dark green circles are existing oak trees that are good size. And then along the northern property line, we have 2 proposed trees, one in the corner there, which is where the trash and recycling or the dumpster is now, and then another close to that 1 parking space. The only other planting there is, other than lawn, is next to the north portico on the north side of the building, again with low sill windows between the accessible ramp and the building. We have a low shrub there in that shady condition. And then in terms of tree removal, we talked about the addition and the dumpsters. There are 2 oak trees there. One that is in the parking lot pavement now. The pavement is paved right up to the trunk, and it would be within the proposed parking. And the other is the trunk would be south of the dumpster and the addition, but the more than half of the root system of like a 24-inch plus oak would be removed. So it would be too big a risk that it would fail.
Okay, thanks. And have you a sense of the ground cover that you're putting in that shaded area?
Yeah, next to the north portico, that's a Itea, which is a shrub that it's low, like shin high, and can handle that shady condition.
Okay. I assume that space behind those windows is habitable and you're trying to open those windows up.
That's right.
Okay. All right, and then could we go back to the site plan and talk about any lighting?
Yeah, so right after the site plan, there's an image of, well, go to the site plan, Joel, if you could. We have 2 scale light fixtures, vehicular scale for the parking in the driveway, and then pedestrian scale for the walkway coming up from Highland Avenue. The next slide shows an elevation of each. There's a 20-foot tall contemporary fixture, LED, full cutoff, dark sky compliant for the vehicular and parking, and then also LED, dark sky compliant, pedestrian scale fixture, 12 feet tall along that path. The next slide shows the photometrics is an average of 1.6 foot candles, and there's shielding on the fixture, so there's no light trespass.
All right, so there's essentially in the rear, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fixtures, 6, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not much. I'm just looking at the light spill, so that's good. Okay. And any lighting on the building?
There's not planned any lighting on the building. There may be a light at the main entry, but it would be as inconspicuous as possible. We're trying not to add fixtures and conduits and that to the outside of the building.
Okay. Susan, you have any other questions on the site landscaping or the building?
Really, I think the building is lovely. It's a big improvement. I had the same feeling about the clock, space for the clock, that there seems to be an opportunity there. Leaving it white kind of draws your eye to, what is that? So I think painting in a clock or doing something creative there would be nice. As far as the landscape, it seems extremely basic, and so I don't know what the program was. I feel like there could be an opportunity for more beautification in the front, but I don't know what the issue is with maintenance. Lawn is always the least expensive to maintain, I guess. But I would like to see less lawn, more plants. That's my
Yeah,
general.
I think that's a good point, because you look at the historic flora and there are bushes. And I don't know what the variety is of stuff, but they had a little bit more planting out front, and whether you want to consider doing something more down closer to the Highland Ave sidewalk or to give it a little bit more foreground, that's always a possibility. Because like I said, it's just basically a big lawn. It certainly could be more interesting planting going on, which would model the historic approach. But I understand limitations on budgets. I guess if you go to the black and white rendering from the north, yeah, that has that. I guess I'm a little concerned about the enclosure on that side. I realize as you're coming the other direction, you don't see much of it, but coming from from Sudbury Farms, you can see quite a bit of that. Those are always difficult to deal with. But to me, this is just a flat roofed, louvered box for the most, essentially. Is that a correct characterization?
I think the idea was to not have it compete with the architecture of the roof, to keep it simple. Yes.
Yeah, I'm concerned that it's, yeah. I
mean,
guess
the other-
scale, I think that works when the scale doesn't compete so much, but what is that? What would be the height of, for instance, that section from the bottom to the roof line of that enclosure?
I believe that's approximately 6.5 feet.
Okay, so it's not, it's a little bit less than it looks. I guess I would wonder if the possibility of just not, instead of having sort of a continuous louver with just a mold connection between them, maybe you make a bit more of, possibly make a more of a jam between them so that they are a series of panels in a way which would reflect the way the punched window approach on the building, which is a series of openings with vertical mass between them. That might soften this, what feels to me like just a big louver up there.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
understand messing with the roof and trying to make it sort of fit into the building with as like a dormer with louvers instead of a dormer with windows. It just seems like it's too big to have pulled that off. So I can see where you got into that condition, but possibly just breaking that up a little bit. And the coloration, I assume, is trying to go towards the slate or black. I missed the color sample on that.
And the slate would be matched to the metal. So it'd be a custom metal louver.
Okay. I guess I have similar feelings about the loading dock enclosure, but again, you're not going to build brick piers on the corners and infill with other panels when this brick is so difficult for you to get hold of. So I think I would kind of echo Chad's consideration that it's a modest element, but I think it's handled in a very simple way, so as to, I mean, that's a choice you made, I guess. I'm not sure I would. I'm not going to say it doesn't work, but I might have seen something that made a little more of an effort to be an extension of the building without trying to match the building. But then lastly, I can say, and Hank knows this, I can show you that clock face anytime you want to see it, because I'm on the board of directors at the Needham History Center, and I put that clock where it is right now. So I can send you a picture and you say, I think it would be nice to, I think my colleagues are correct. I think if that was a little more detailed, so that it had a recessed panel and the panel was dark and you just let the ghost of the clock exist in some way, I wouldn't suggest hands or numbers necessarily, but even sort of three-dimensionally, sort of bringing that back a little bit, it would be a nice, I think would help that up there, because it looks like something's missing right now. And people, it would still know that it was a clock and it isn't a clock, but at least you're acknowledging that it was there. Right now, it's sort of the way it's covered up. If we kind of continue that very simple flat approach, I'm concerned that it'll just continue to look like, oh, what happened up there? So I think it would be nice to maybe just do a little bit of detailing there, and can help bring that up to a level up there that looks good. But I think all the other work I liked. I think it's difficult to change those entries and change those heights. And I thought Chad had some good points on the front, maybe a little more interest or detailing on that lower panel level, or a different, even planting beds in front. I appreciate that you're leaving the stairs, and I like the planting beds that he's doing besides them. And I recognize those low windows. I mean, you can see them in the historic photos I've seen there. I spent some time in this building years ago, negotiating the lease for the Needham History Center to be on the Newman School lot. So I got familiar with it then. So I always thought getting an elevator inside that building was going to be very difficult, and assumed that it would be outside adjacent to the building and then just connected. But you guys found an approach that seems to put it inside, so it works centrally. And so I appreciate that. And those multi-level changes at that entrance are extremely difficult. So I think you found some nice solutions there. So
Mark, if I could pick up on one of your suggestions on the on that louver enclosure, I think trying to make it look historic is not necessarily going to be the right thing. Which if the paneling is vertical, it could. But if you look at the images of the building, the cornice line is very horizontal, and it might be that since it's a more contemporary material, if there's either some horizontal banding or maybe even a slightly projecting fin that wrapped around it, and you actually play up some horizontality of that a little bit more than trying to break it up with vertical panels. Keeping it in a more kind of contemporary modern language with the metal, might make it just sort of blend in with the roof lines and break it up a little bit that way, just so it's not so boxy.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you can see where we're going here. It's really just some of these very simple elements might benefit from just a little bit more detailing.
Sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. As you've probably read, we've been struggling with the budget and a number of other issues. So these are really great opportunities for us to just get a couple of new ideas. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So actually, Hank, Elisa has sent me forwarded some information. I was asking about what kind of review we were doing. And was it simply a minor site plan review? Were we coming from the planning board? Because our responsibility under a minor site plan review is simply to send our comments to the building inspector. I was just going to ask, is that where this is? Has there been any discussion with the planning board beyond your consultation with them before when this group appeared before them?
Yes, initially we had thought it would be a major project special permit, but the modifications, and that was over a year ago when there was a large addition going to the back of the building. With the simplification of the building, reduction in the program, and keeping the program largely interior to the building, it's been reduced now to a minor project, and it's a special permit in large part because of requests for waivers on parking to the ZBA. So we will have a stop at the planning board, and they, like you, will be passing along comments to the ZBA.
Okay, thank you. That clears that up for me. All right, well, I don't think that was good, and thank you for the information, and the package was very thorough. We had some time to look through it. It was very helpful. I think you've brought this building a long way. It's a controversial building, certainly, but I've always been a fan. I love that. You just don't see that kind of brickwork very often, and it's held up pretty well. That south portico that Joel mentioned was a bit of a tough thing, about 12 years ago, but it's survived, and I hope that any minor repair you need to do now would put it in good stead with the rest of the building. So thank you for coming, and we will send some comments on to the board, the ZBA and the building inspector.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the time and the comments.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next item is Paul Good Revitalization Trust Fund. They're proposing proposing a future banner on the wall along Eaton Square, the opposite Eaton Square across the railroad tracks, and then a temporary thing. So Paul, why don't you take us through what you are proposing to do here?
Sure. As two things. One is that as we're continuing to evolve towards the funding of the Eaton Square Art Gallery, which we're working very diligently to be able to get the funding for that during 2022, so we can actually get it installed in 2022. That one of the things we wanted to do is be able to actually let a lot of the public know that, hey, you really want to help us fund this project. Since for the most part, most of them don't really know much about it. So the first thought was to be able to create a, I guess, a wall applique that would be on the wall that would house would be the home for the gallery, and show them a large enough scale of it so they could actually see and get a feel for what the gallery would look like. So this wall applique would basically be adhered to the wall as a temporary piece, and it's 8 feet wide, 4 feet tall. Just to give you a perspective in terms of the scale of the wall is about 60 feet wide and about 15 feet tall. So this would basically just apply in the center of the wall and be there. My expectation is that probably for 3 to 4 months. I'm hoping it's basically when we get it funded, we'll start to work on the renovations to the wall and start doing everything we can to get it done before we go into the colder seasons. So at least certainly in terms of all the wall preparation, because the reality is that a good portion of this project is fixing up some of the mortar work, with repaired pointing, that kind of thing. There are 2 vents that are on the wall that are almost completely self-destructed, and basically we want to be able to make the wall so it all looks very beautiful. And then the frames, which in the detail that I gave you, to sort of refresh all of your memories about when we were here a few years ago to be able to approve the project originally, that the frames are 3 feet by 5 feet. They have basically what will be essentially a backer board that is made out of a material, something along the lines of Omega Bond. I know some of you are probably familiar with that, but it's basically has a center core, like a plastic material on the center core with aluminum on both sides, and it's powder coated aluminum. So it basically doesn't require any maintenance. It doesn't rust, but it gives a stable backing to it. So when it attaches to the wall, it's flat and stable, and keeps the frame intact. And so anyway, so that's basically where we're at. We just want to be able to raise public awareness on the fact that this project is just waiting for funding, and as soon as it's funded, it'll be installed.
Okay, so I guess my questions are, I'll open it up here, but so the poster we're looking at is the 4x8 poster that you want to put on the wall temporarily.
Yes, that's right.
I don't recall I do recall the review of the lighting and the frame system and the concept of doing this gallery along the wall. I don't remember that sign. Was that sign?
Yeah, it's pretty much been there from the beginning.
Is that what we looked at earlier?
It's something it's basically sort of it stands off the brick. I guess it's considered to be halo lighting. Flex back onto the brick, that style of lighting. And, basically when we start to ramp up to get that installed, we're happy to come back and have you review, the actual physical, specifications of what gets, of the materials and so on that get chosen.
Yeah, well, I guess my concern is that I think if you were here for that sign, we would probably, I'm not speak for everyone, but it's a little bit large. We would want to shrink it a little bit.
Well, and actually that is going to happen because one of the things that that isn't in the image right here, that visibly is the vents that are actually part of the ventilation of the upper part of the wall there. And the sign is actually the gallery sign itself is going to shrink down to being in the area of where those between those vents. So it's centered, it'll be smaller in scale.
Okay, well, I guess my concern that the next level is if you put a poster up and say, this is what we're going to get, and everybody donates money, and then they come back and they have a sign that's, half or 2/3 of that sign and that they looked at on that poster for all that time, is that a concern for you?
Well, I think that first of all, we want to have it be as accurate as possible because, just like with all of our projects, we pretty much try to be able to make it so that this is what it looks like. And if you fund it, this is what it's going to look like. In this particular case, because of the top, I'm actually, I was actually talking to the designer this afternoon, and he's going to render up a flat version of this. This is a dimensional version, meaning it's perspective.
Yeah.
So he's going to create a one based on the specific flat measurements of the entire thing to get the placement of this sign. And so that's, as I said, that's something that I want to be able to make sure it's represented properly. So hopefully within the next week, we will have a rendering of that. And if it ends up looking substantially different than what we've got, then we will change the image on the picture to be able to reflect what the reality of it is going to be if it's substantially different.
Okay. Well, let me open up for comments. Susan?
I don't have any comments. I misunderstood actually that it was a sign. I thought it was something else. So I don't have any comments.
Okay, yeah, it's basically a temporary panel, like a sheet of plywood size that he wants to put up that will advertise for this future gallery, which we've reviewed a few years ago. Chad?
Yeah, I don't have any particular comments. I think depending on whether it's an actual panel or like a 3M material, I would just note that if it's anything that's going to protrude, it's a fairly narrow sidewalk with the commuter rail station, a lot of people going by. So I would just be mindful of anything that is projecting out that people might snag themselves on. But I think just in terms of trying to raise awareness, I'm fine with it. And I forget if we discussed back. I remember being part of the conversation before, but just more personal curiosity. Why is gallery spelled with an IE at the end?
It's just the French version, which is just a little bit more fun.
Okay.
And people ask, so it starts conversations too. So
yeah.
All right. Well, I guess the caveat to you is that we've discussed this a couple of times, but there's never been a presentation that we have approved. We've sort of talked about the idea, we like it, that let's do this. We think that works nicely. So at some point when you're ready to install this, we'll want to see, just a little application with the frames are going here, the height, here's how they're installed, these are the lights, this is the sign. And then we can finalize that. Because again, I think the sign's too big, and I want a chance to formally review that sign and help determine what's an appropriate size there.
Yeah.
And again, I have a little bit of worry about deception, but we'll hope people have short memories and don't try and think that this was an exact representation of exactly what was going to come. So
yeah, I'd say similarly, those kind of lights, tend to be, decorative lights that you might have in a library, but just look larger. So they probably are going to need to be something industrial that if somebody jumped up and hung on it, it's not going to snap off the wall, and a lot of things like that.
Yeah, so as I said, when we well, first of all, it's it's like several years later from when we originally put all this together and put all the items together for it. So we're out literally reviewing the costs of the materials and updating the quotes and all that right now, to be sure that we're still in line with what we had projected as the budget for or the cost to be able to fund. So as we're doing that, we're pulling up the the specific specifications for things that, just like as Chad mentioned, for the lighting, and certainly the scaling of the sign is one of the things that we're as I mentioned, actively working on right now, in terms of making sure that whatever we represent in this image, we want to be able to do it so that people feel that it's very close to to what they're actually going to see.
Okay.
So and honestly, I won't publish it, or put it up on the wall until I'm, satisfied that what we're showing is pretty close to exactly what they're going to see in the end result.
Okay.
So.
All right. The other thing he asked about is there are the light pole banners nearby. They want to do another. I think that's the last page of our submission of our packet. And I don't have any problem with that at all. Those banners are ever changing, and I think that's gives him a chance, gives an opportunity for people to do the QR code down low and close without crossing the tracks and having to walk up to that sign if they're interested. So the more he can promote it in that area, I think that's fine. I don't know. I'll see if anybody had any questions or concerns on those banners, the light pole banners.
Or just as importantly is the 4x4 bracket that's attached low to the pole. In fact, that was one of the reasons, the primary reason, since our banners normally go through the select board for approval, so that the banner that you see is actually on the agenda, or should be on the agenda for the select board meeting coming up in a few days, or maybe it's tomorrow actually. But what I wanted to be able to show to you all is this bracket that we've created, because although it's all great to be able to see a QR code and a banner when it's 10 or 15 feet in the air, it's not really going to do anything for you. So I thought, well, hey, if we can come up with a system that would strap lower on the pole and have it be about 4 inches by 4 inches, so it's easily scanned, that it would make it so that now you see the message on the banner that says, here's how.
Yep.
And down below, you can basically just focus your phone on that QR code and then have it pull right up.
Okay.
So it literally looks, this is a physical representation of.
Yeah, I can see the image. No, I think that works well.
Any considerations in terms of, we wanted to make sure that the bracket sat so that it in such a way that, you'd be walking around the base, no matter where it was applied, they should be walking beyond the base anyway, so it wasn't protruding. People wouldn't be bumping into it. It's just, you would basically just turn and face it, and that you could,
okay. Okay, well, that seems to work. It's within the bounds of the base of that post, so it seems like a reasonable thing. Any other objection or comment? Okay.
And just one other thing that is possible, we're doing this experiment with this, accessible QR code on Eaton Square. The other question that we've been asked was so, is this something that you would apply to, say, Chapel Street? And I'm just interested in whether your comments on your thoughts of whether that would, what you think about that, And second, just in case people bring that up to us. And the second is that we wanted to be able to just roll this out on Eaton Square Plaza as the experiment to see if people would actually even respond to scan it. So, you know, if it basically doesn't get any response or people don't, you know, aren't interested, then obviously it's, you know, it's an interesting idea, but if people don't use it, then it's not accomplishing what it's supposed to, which is to link people to more information about that particular thing.
So and Susan, what he's talking about is on the Needham Center Fine Wines, their facade has a blank panel to the right as it's near Citizens Bank. And Paul has proposed a series of posters recognizing Needham citizens. And there's a frame, and we approved that a while back, and that's probably getting close to going in at some point.
Yes, he just finished painting the wall, and the materials have now arrived, so they're going to go off to the carpenter tomorrow to be able to be assembled. So we're moving ahead. It'll be good.
So, and the idea of a QR code on that is that it goes to the Needham Revitalization Trust website or something? Where does it go?
Yes, well, actually, the first one, and you'll actually be the first to know about this, is that because the particular one that we're rolling out first is profiling Sunita Williams, that we were able to reach out thanks to Amy Halson and her group in the background to Sunita, and to ask her if she would shoot a short video that would be incorporated into it, because this particular panel will have these will have the QR code built right into the image of the wall.
Right.
Profile.
Right, I understand.
No bracket or like that is required for anything. But
Okay.
but people can walk up and scan it, and then in this particular case, Sunita will talk to them.
Okay. Okay. I don't have any issues with that, and that was probably discussed when we looked at those before.
Yes. Yeah.
So, all right.
Mark,
Well, I think
one thing.
The question I was asking about though is if we were to use this type of bracket, if there were, you know, something used for this type of bracket on the pole that is actually poles that are on Chapel Street as part of the Chapel Street banner showcase, tying to something that would be on those poles, you know, I look at concerns about being able to use that type of bracket on those poles, since that's a sidewalk and people are walking by.
Yeah, that's, you know, I think you're going to have to deal with DPW and the selectmen on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's.
Chad, you had a
Yeah,
question?
I think two things that relative to the QR codes and the brackets is, you know, one, to the extent that we have a motion on it, I would suggest that we clarify that it's for public service announcements and other non-commercial, similar non-commercial purposes. And that two, that we would probably limit the number of applications. So, you know, if it's along a segment of street, that there might be one on each side of the street, as opposed to like, you know, bracket on every single pole as you're going up and down the street, you know, just to, you know, be able to access and get the information, but not suddenly like start to cover every single pole in the same kind of little unit added on.
You know, on Chapel Street, just to remind you that the Chapel Street banner showcase has two showcases that go on simultaneously every month. They are every other pole, 5 poles each. So it's a total of 10 poles, and each 5 grouping is all the same banner, same organization, and so on.
Right.
So that's one unit, and then the other one is, and then the you know 1, 3, 5 versus 7, and this one, you know, is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10.
Right. So there are 2 groupings of 5. Does that mean we would have 2 of those QR code brackets, 1 for each of the grouping, or that you would have 10 of those QR code brackets?
Well, that's the thing. I would say that the likelihood, because I don't want to put a lot of stuff on the poles. I mean, I just don't think it looks attractive, right? So
That's kind of where I was going. Yeah.
we probably do. We probably roll it out by just having one of these brackets on on one of the poles that would change. So when people walk down, and we'd figure out whether, is it at the end of the row or the beginning of the row, but whatever it is, in a place where we think people might pause to be able to actually do it, or it might be on the first and second pole and then not on the rest of the street, so that people would see it and they could stop at one versus the other, because that'd be 2 cycles.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree with you. It's not, I try to be able to keep everything as beautiful and simplified as we possibly can, and not do things that clutter the aesthetic.
All right, so we do have really 3 things, I guess, to look at here. Well, 2 applications. One is kind of combined. So the banners that go on the poles is, we haven't typically, he sort of has a approval over time to change those and not have to review each one, which we did a while back. But I would, on the poster, that 4x8 poster with the rendering of the future art gallery, take to a motion to approve as submitted.
So moved.
Susan seconded. I saw her move her. All right, then come to the vote. Susan Opton,
Approved.
Chad Riley,
Approved.
and the chair approves. The second item is to approve the QR code attachment in Eaton Square Plaza or on the other Chapel Street banners, with the condition that that it limited to be public service announcements only, and that they're limited to 1 pole per installation. Let's start with that, Paul.
So moved.
Yeah, that's fine, because actually the one that is most accessible on Eaton Square Plaza is right in the middle of the plaza.
Yeah.
And that's where all the chairs and tables and benches are. So that's, that works great.
Okay.
Second.
So moved.
Come to the vote. Susan Opton,
Approved.
Chad Riley,
Approved.
and the chair approves. All right, thanks, Paul.
Thanks. Just a question in terms of what the definition of public service announcements. We're only, everything that we do is all going to be tied to a nonprofit that is displaying or a town asset that's displaying. So all of that, I assume, any videos that are connected to those types of things and so on, were all considered essentially public service.
Yeah, if they're connected to your organization. You're doing it. I mean, you're a division of town government. I mean, you're an official appointed group. So yes, it's just the idea that if people come to you and say, "Could you promote this for us?"
Yeah,
you have to say, we want you to say no.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about businesses all of a sudden wanting to get expand their advertising reach and wanting these little QR codes, hey, you're in the center of town now, but don't forget that XYZ business is over there.
Yeah, no, believe me, because in fact we at one point we had marketing directors coming to us to say, hey, can we do a campaign with throughout the town like you do with the other banners to be able to promote this thing? And they said, sorry, it's written into the guidelines that it can only be town assets or town sponsored events, and we don't take any advertising, and you can't advertise your business on it. You can just basically it's nonprofits, and so I hear you completely, and believe me, that's not what we want to get tied into. No matter how much money you could probably bring into the fund, it's not the idea of the fund. It's never been the intention, and that type of mindset has been there since the very beginning. So I'm with you.
Okay, thanks, Paul. We'll get you stamped approval and with these notations.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for all your comments, and now we'll just get these things on, onward and upward.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay. Next item are review of minutes of February 28th. We were all there, so that's good. So any questions or comments on the minutes of February 28th? God, that might have been your first meeting, Susan.
It was, yes.
Okay, so I take a motion to approve the minutes of the 28th.
So moved.
Second,
All right, and we vote. Susan,
approved.
Chad,
Approved.
and Chair approves. Then we also have the minutes of March 28th. And we were all there as well, so that was good. So I take a motion to approve the minutes of March 28th.
So moved.
Second,
All right, and we vote. Susan,
approved.
Chad,
Approved.
and the chair approves. That's sort of a tedious way to have to go through minutes, isn't it? We used to just go, yeah, look good. So
Yeah.
What is Rana and Alyssa laughing so hard
I
about?
don't know.
I'm laughing at Mark's thoughts because he just said it's tedious and we're both like, just, you guys are like, move, approve, yes, second.
It's like a club.
You just want to get through it.
Yeah, I approve. I approve.
We still need to motion to adjourn though.
Yes.
Yes. I would take a motion to adjourn. I'll be a little more
So
animated.
moved.
I have a second.
Second,
All right. And we vote. Susan,
absolutely.
Chad,
Approved.
and the chair approves. Thank you. That's a long one for us. That was actually, we've had longer. That one was, I think,
Yeah.
hard.
I did
Susan,
it.
you're a trooper.
Took some
Usually
hard.
the meetings are not this long, but you did
Yeah.
it. So I commend you for
Right.
going through it, Susan.
And Chad,
Yeah.
thanks
You
for,
can probably stop recording now.
Yeah, where is that?
My dinner's cold, so I have to go.
okay.
Yeah.
Bye,
Right, thanks.
guys.